Welcome to Be the Glue series, where we share short and casual but impactful conversations with individuals who have been the glue by bridging people, ideas, and efforts together to create something meaningful. So today, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Megan Clifford, the founder of Wellness Associates of Greater Rochester. She has 25 plus years of experience as a social worker, psychotherapist, trainer, and consultant. So welcome, Megan. I'm so excited to have you join me today.
Me too, Elina. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you about this.
Megan is a post Disrupt HR Rochester speaker and a couple years now as a coach too for newer speakers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like we're in so many different communities together.
Yeah, definitely a glue connection there, right? Doing things all over the place and connecting with wonderful people like yourself. So,
Thank you. So okay, let's get into the glue. So as you do a lot of work providing mental health literacy, crisis intervention education, and I think you work with businesses, nonprofits, and even government. So what does glue or the glue, being the glue, what does that mean to you?
so being the glue for me, I think, especially through the lens of being a social worker. So some people don't necessarily, know how we're trained, but we're trained completely through a systems and strength based lens. That's what how social workers are trained. So I think always seeing things through those lenses, um, combined with my core value of connection and relationships, has really helped me to be able to um, see some places where there was a little glue that needed to be done, especially in between organizations and people and systems that really didn't understand or know each other or how they could work together. So I think as a social worker and also running a business, it's kind of a unique lens, because I've been in a lot of settings with a lot of diverse stakeholders, and I can leverage those skills, being a systems thinker, and just having a natural ability to collaborate. I think that brings people to understand people who may not have been in the same room, or people who may not understand where other folks are coming from very diverse ways of thinking. And sometimes it goes very well. And it's a lot of aha moments. And sometimes there are some things that get in the way in terms of people's, inflexibility or rigidity with the way that they think about others and systems and all sorts of different things. So I try to bring some understanding to folks, and I think that's kind of how I'm the glue. I'm that middle piece that's kind of connecting things together, but it's
Yeah.
very gooey. It's gooey and gluey
So
sometimes.
yeah, tell me, how does that feel? How does that look like? Is it bringing people together, conversations, facilitation? What does it usually look like? Especially the systems piece, right? Because that goes beyond just the relationship. That goes, you have society and
Mhm.
norms and government structures and all sorts of things that can complicate and
Yeah.
create a complex situation. Yeah, how does that look?
So, like in the corporate setting, or when I'm working with like HR, C level folks, it's really having them get a deep understanding of how their employees' mental health and well being impacts their bottom line. Sometimes, when I'm offering trainings or different collaborative opportunities, they're not seeing how important that is to understanding the bottom line and how much it will cost them if they're not being aware of that. And what I found is people, a lot of times, like, yeah, we need that, we need mental health support, and we need that kind of stuff, but they don't know what they need and they don't know how to implement it, if they're not walked through that. So I think that's something I am able to do, is bring that content and help them be able to recognize how that's going to connect or stick
Yeah.
their financial wellness to their employees' wellness. That's nothing new for HR professionals to know that, but understanding, especially for some of the folks I've dealt with lately, is like, that's not my job. I'm not a therapist, and using the mental health literacy education to really just provide very basic skills to provide support to employees. It's no surprise to anyone how significant the mental health crisis is. So I think, you know, understanding how you can impact your employees all the way up through your management, your supervisory staff, and I'm doing this in you know at banks, but I'm doing it at Barilla Pasta for their manufacturing supervisors, right? So understanding throughout all different sorts of systems and organizations why that fundamental need to care for your employees is so important. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that
And
answers your question.
oh my God, yeah, this and 100 million questions in my head right as you're sharing, right? But what are some patterns? Are you seeing patterns? Are you seeing trends that are emerging, or at least from your conversations or what you're experiencing?
In terms of the open, well, I think let's go back to relationships.
Yeah.
With the organizations I have relationships with, whether I built them informally or through networks or through folks like yourself, who understand the importance of that, um, having that champion or that person who really is the glue for me in that situation, it's gone very well with. For folks, if you're just pitching it, obviously, and we know, networking is relationships, but even the places where you go in and you say, this is how much money you're losing. Um, Let me give you an example. If there's a company that has 5,000 employees, there's a calculator for this in the American Psychiatric Association. I can calculate how much money you're going to lose per year by not responding to employee mental health challenges. So
Mhm.
if you have a company with 5,000 people, you're going to lose around $8 million a year if you're not attending to mental health when you're looking at absenteeism, presenteeism, short and long term disability. So if I'm going into an organization, cold turkey, which I really don't do all that much anymore because people don't make that connection. Even when I'm saying to them, here's the data, here's what they're seeing, there's still this block, whether it's a traditional way of thinking, you're here to do your job, just get it done, or not recognizing, that an ounce of prevention is worth whatever that a pound of cure.
Yeah.
There still is that rigidity in some organizations and systems where that's not our job, even when you're trying to show them the retention it costs and all those kinds of things. So but where I've been able to be most successful really is where I have been able to have those, more informal conversations at Disrupt HR. I just, kind of on a whim got involved with this Disrupt HR. I'm not in HR, but just being able to understand more about what was going on through the lens of the HR professionals I met really gave me a lot of information on how to tailor, what I do and how I, pitch my experience to organizations to continue, my business.
Yeah. So, and as you work with organizations, I bet that you have to work not just with the C level, but also with HR professionals and also with the direct leaders, because I'm assuming that the direct leadership impact to the employee, right, it has
Yeah.
significant um,
Yeah, definitely. We wanna
impact.
target all we wanna target all levels of the organization with mental health literacy. So when we say that, people might not know what that means.
Mhm.
So mental health literacy would be programs like mental health first aid or building a trauma-informed workplace. Understanding the impact of collective trauma on your workforce. For me, doing like the crisis intervention, you have an employee who passes away, you bring me in once, I do a debriefing, the next day. It's not we're done, let's tie it up in a bow. It's your employees are still struggling a month later, 2 months later,
Yeah.
right? So, understanding really what that means and that it's not just like a one-time program. So when I talk about mental health literacy with companies, I'll be like, you know, do you know when Mental Health Awareness Month is? And they're like, no. Do you know what color we wear in mental health awareness? No, no, no. And mental health awareness can't be a week that you do in May and everyone wears green, right? It has to be integrated throughout your programming, just like people have the, year-long health challenges, eat 5 fruits or whatever, they need to be doing that consistently with mental health. So having them understand the benefit of having not only, your upper management, your C, your leadership, but your supervisors, your middle managers, like for Barilla Pasta, having the floor supervisors trained to recognize when their employees were struggling was huge. And it was a safety issue. Like, some of the organizations I work with in those industries, like, they're seeing if I have an employee who is mentally unwell, that's the same as having, that should be on the same par as physical safety, right? Looking at almost through like an OSHA lens, right? This is dangerous for this individual. They could, they're tired, they can't concentrate, they can get injured. So looking at kind of through that workers' compensation lens has been interesting. Um, but I think what the research has shown, I'm a total geek. I read about this stuff all the time, but the research shows that the number one reason that people or that companies do well with mental health literacy and mental health programming is C-level buy-in and C-level and upper management being open and honest about their own struggles with mental health challenges or people in their lives, because it's that normalization. So I try to really, through my networks and just through my personal connections, encourage people who I know are open about that, even, in their personal life, saying, hey, it would be really impactful, I think, if you were willing to be open about this with your employees. And every time that's happened, I know that it's had a pretty positive outcome. I can think of, we were working with the Federal Highway Administration to do some mental health literacy, mental health first aid. And, the director of the Federal Highway Transportation, whatever it's called, was very open about his experiences living with depression. And
Wow.
that just made it, at that high of a level in government, made it okay to have these trainings and have people feel, okay, I can tell my supervisor when I'm struggling and not be worried I'm gonna get fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's so important. And it's interesting because at that sea level, you know, um, they struggle a lot of times with being vulnerable.
mhm. Oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and
Right.
how do you get past that? I mean, right? Like leadership buying is important at every initiative, but this one is really like it goes to a deeper level, a core level, and you got to be okay to be vulnerable with your employees.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where some of my psychotherapy skills training comes
Yeah.
in well, of being able to help people feel validated, and feel, that they're not alone and that connection is important and that, it's not a commentary on you as a person or your skill set or who you are, or that you dealt with this illness that impacted you. And sometimes I think, we have is so connected to our identity. If we make, it's the ego part. If I make any suggestion that I am not, completely together all the time, then people are, they're not going to trust me. They're not going to think I can do my job versus saying, hey, I'm a human being and stuff has happened. Same with trauma. People experience, significant traumas. Um, whether, if they're in more of those C-level leaderships, how can that not impact you? There's no way. And you heard me say this in my Disrupt HR talk. People don't leave their trauma at the door when they walk into the office. They don't just say, okay, I'm done thinking about this for today. So being able to say, hey, it's okay. If you need a little extra time or, throughout the organization, one of the things I always say about sort of another glue thing is make sure you know when somebody has a traumatic experience. Let's say they have a sudden death in their family or something. Make sure you don't just go to the services and give your condolences and go back to work and, you know, just move on with your life. With your employees, with people, you know, be mindful of, consistently supporting them, being the glue through their journey back into work or throughout their, grieving process. Know the date of the person's passing. Around the holidays, name that it could be difficult for your employee, right? So being aware that we're not when we're experiencing these different things, I always think of when I get called to do the crisis interventions, right? It's just like the one time versus saying, let's be aware of when this person's, you know, loved one or whatever. Let's be aware that that's not a one and done,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well,
So
because
I,
grief comes in those little
yeah, well,
moments throughout
yeah,
the
yeah.
day.
And I think like
Yeah.
people do a great job. It's like, so let me give you an example. So if somebody, let's say you have an employee that has cancer, um, and everybody rallies around that person, which as they should, right? Meal trains and cards and flowers and all those kinds of things. And how can I help you? And, can I get you to your appointment or let me donate 2 hours of PTO, right? So those are wonderful things that we do for our coworkers who are dealing with physical health challenges. What if you had a coworker who was hospitalized for major depression and came out and
Mm.
needed the same supports, right? They need the meal train, they need the cards, they need the flowers, right? Is that person even going to be comfortable letting anyone know why they were in the hospital? Like, it's kind of the same thing in terms of, um, consistent emotional support, no matter what experience somebody's having, if it's causing them emotional or mental distress.
Yeah. Mm. That's a really good example. And the employee has to be okay, right? To like share and accept some of that support. Where I struggle a lot of times is I want to offer my help and I just don't know what to do. And
Mhm.
a lot of times people are like, they don't ask. We don't ask. We're not good about asking for help
Well,
either. That's
come
a
get some
huge.
mental health literacy training then.
I do. I need
Yeah.
to.
Because that's I mean, that's part of what that is teaching people how to ask difficult questions in a
Yeah.
kind of caring way, and just making the environment comfortable so that if somebody were to be hospitalized for that, they wouldn't feel ashamed. Not that they're gonna
Yep.
go in the break room and be like, "I was in the hospital for major depression," but, that if they were able to say that and not feel that they would be considered less than,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
can't hack it or can't do their job. Just that's what the workplace culture change, I think would be is being able to, if somebody wanted to, they could say that because somebody might have other medical concerns and not want to speak about them either,
Yeah.
but
It's a
it's
fine
just much
line.
more likely that somebody, mental health challenges are often invisible, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, give us some tips as to like how can we ask when we know that people struggle with asking for help? How can we ask in a good way that opens up the door? That even I have even friends with cancer and they don't want to ask for help. So sometimes I'll go and I'll do little things, but still I don't know if that is supporting them or if there are other ways to provide support and ask in a different way.
yeah, so I think the thing that I find, and this is probably me projecting a little bit in my own life, is when, oh, let me know if I can do anything for you. Like, mm, how many times I can be like, yeah, I mean, unless you're like my best friend, I'm not gonna but you know what I could really use? Like, I could really use, um, you know, someone to shovel my driveway, right? And I had a friend who was struggling with something in her personal life, and everybody was in there, "Oh, let me know what I can do. Let me know what I can do." And she's like, she said to me, Megan, I'm going to text you a list of what I need done. And this was the neighborhood. Send it to the neighborhood, and it would be great if people just did those things. So it
I
was
love that.
completely off her plate. I was like, "I'm totally stealing that," and it was just like, "Here's the list." Um, this she has 4 kids, she works 2 jobs, I was like, "Okay," and so, my husband's taking care of the driveway, somebody else did the leaves, somebody else was doing whatever, whatever she needed. Just doing things, I think, especially it does depend on your relationship with that person, but thinking about things like depending on your industry, like, "Hey, can I take this thing off your plate?" Versus or "I'd like to take this thing off your plate," just the way that you said, "I'd like to take this off your plate," versus, "Do you want me to take that off your plate?" It's just very different, nuanced stuff in our language about how we provide support. But I also just say completely straight up ask. I'd like to be able to do something, concrete that's going to be helpful for you. Can you think of anything? If not, that's totally fine. Let me circle back with you in a few days and see if you've thought of something.
I love
'Cause it's the
that.
consistency. It's not one and done because a lot of times we'll do, "Oh, can I be helpful? Let me know if I can be helpful to you." It's really to make me feel better. It's really make me feel better that I offered, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because, we're busy, but, um, I think I've seen over and over, especially in the mental health literacy classes that I teach, whenever we talk about that, the consistency of the support, people are like, "Yeah, yeah, that would mean a
Yeah.
lot." Um, and interestingly enough, when I teach these, like I'm teaching a series of classes right now to home health aid trainees. And these are folks who have traditionally come from challenging socioeconomic environments, right? And, experience a lot of trauma in a lot of different ways. And being able to have a conversation, even with them, to be able to say, oh, yeah, that would have been really, really helpful to me. I always see this when we're talking about it. Like, oh, yeah.
Especially if they're working with elderly, if they're going to support, you know, um, populations that maybe, they felt more independent and now they need a lot more support and they're struggling with that, right? Like I
Yep.
know when my uncle passed away this year, but he struggled with asking for help. Even
Hmm.
the home health aide that would come and check on him and he was
Hmm.
like, "It's okay, don't worry, I got
Yep.
this."
Hmm.
Like, "Well, you don't. That's why I'm here." Right?
Yeah. Well,
And it's hard. It's hard.
and that's a great example of being the glue when folks in those, and we're doing a lot of training in the healthcare arena right now, have those tools to be able to be the glue for that older adult, right? So, or somebody has a stroke, right? They've lost, you know, they they're grieving the loss of their ability to, move or to whatever it is, they're grieving the loss of the life that they were familiar with, and the emotional, strain that that puts on them and their family, right? Maybe their finances, all of these different things. So having somebody in those roles that can say, "Hey, I've noticed that you've been, looking a little down lately. Is everything okay?" Right, and building that relationship, but, you might not think the home health aide is the person that's going to be having that conversation, but anyone can have that
Yeah.
conversation. Not to go too deep into that, with that, example, home health aides are doing the most personal kinds of things to care for an individual. How vulnerable do you have to be there,
Yeah.
right? So, I think, we're looking at training home health aides to do that. We're looking at training supervisors in a warehouse.
Yeah.
A lot of tough guys in a warehouse that are not gonna go and tell you that
Yeah.
they're dealing with alcoholism or depression, right? So, back to your point of it's really important to get that leadership, but then the supervisors and the colleague level,
Yeah.
right? You can say something to your colleague that somebody, a supervisor couldn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
S
Wow. What tips, what are some things you can maybe share with us? I mean, the holidays are coming up. I know we did a episode last year.
Yeah, we
Oh,
did, but
I'm gonna
we
put the
can
link.
redo. We
I
can
will share
redo it.
the link right below this one so we can share our conversation about just what you can do during the holiday season. But what are some tips or something you want to share with the audience as we're talking about the holidays?
A couple like more unique things I think about. Well, first is not everybody loves the holidays. And you got to remember that not everybody wants to, feels like it's a joyous time for them. There could be a lot of difficult feelings for folks. Thinking about when you're planning events, I think of the introverts in your office who are like, oh my God, a holiday party is my biggest nightmare.
Hmm.
Right. So thinking about having a variety of different options for folks to connect or choose not to connect over your celebration during your celebrations, um, and during the holidays. Wait, I'm blanking on the last one I was going to say. Hmm. I don't know. We'll have to circle back to that one. But I'm thinking that those are kind of like the macro and the meso or the
Yeah.
micro, recognize that it's really hard for some people and they don't want to be jolly and they don't want you trying to make them feel jolly. And then the folks that, want to connect, but they don't want to do it in a big, ballroom, dressed up and, at a country club. That's not for them, you know?
Yes. No, no, and for me, like, I'm always, like, the positive one. I'm trying to bring cheer, and
Mhm.
a lot of times, like, I have to pause, and I have to think it through, and I do have currently, a couple of people who struggle with the holidays, and we had awesome conversations
Yeah.
about and that, like, that opened up the door for that intimate, like, that
Yeah.
vulnerable conversation, to share both sides. Like,
Yeah.
the holidays come, we all lose people, and the holiday season, it's always difficult, and the closest the person, right, the most difficult. I think I was just setting the Thanksgiving table a couple weeks ago, and every time I tend
Yeah.
to remove one more place
Yeah.
card, and
I
you look
remember
at
that
them.
last year. Yep. For you.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and this year, another one, right? So it's,
Yeah.
you look at those names, and, just it's the memories, right, that stay.
Yeah, and I think your point is so well taken when you said that that just opened up the conversation. That's why it's so important for people to really understand and build the knowledge of or build the relationship with their employees in terms of understanding, what do they like? What does work best for them? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? What do you like in terms of, and I know a lot of HR people do this, how do you like to be celebrated? You know, no, if I'm dealing with, diabetes, please don't bring me a huge cake to celebrate
Yes.
something. Like, no, know that about your people,
Yeah.
you know,
The little things, right? It's the little
right.
things.
It is, and that's what, makes people feel more safe at work, especially we talked about this before, if you're coming into a new organization from an organization that had an unhealthy, workplace environment or toxic workplace environment, people are gonna be much more reluctant to be vulnerable, to share until they know that that you're trustworthy, right? So taking that time, especially when you have new folks coming in the office to really get to know, um, how they like to be celebrated. What's their processing style? Letting them know that you're a safe person if they have something that they want to talk about. Right? They may not want to talk to you, and that's perfectly fine. But you never know. Maybe you're the only person that's ever said to them, "Hey, if you need to talk to me, I'm here."
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
that's awesome. Oof, Megan, I can talk to you forever, you know that.
I can talk to you forever
I
too.
know.
We do sometimes. We do talk to each other
We
for
do. We
hours.
we go for coffee, and then we just geek out. Like,
Yeah.
I just love
Like,
it. I love
"Oh
it.
my god, it's been 4 hours. We gotta pick up our kids."
Where can people find you?
My website is, wellnessrochester.com. You can email me at Megan, Megan, at wellnessrochester.com. You can just Google Megan Clifford and wellnessrochester.com will pop up for you. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or interested in bringing any mental health literacy training to your organization. We have a great team. We are very flexible. We can train, your 11 to 7 shift. We can train your, not that we love to, but we can train your 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shifts, and be flexible in accommodating what each organization needs to meet the needs of their employees.
Do you have, any guides or anything on your website that it's like a free kind of resource that you wanna share?
Yep, we have, if you click on the resource tab, there's plenty, tons and tons of different resources that you can use within your organization. Also, the one thing I really want to push is folks to really start getting on board with the trauma informed workplace. They hear the word trauma and they're like, "Oh,"
Yes. Yeah.
understanding if you you work through a lens, and it doesn't have to be in your nonprofit, right? If you are in a corporation and you are looking through a trauma informed lens, recognizing that every employee is bringing something in with them every day, it can truly transform your workplace. So there's information on that on the website as well. Um, Really important stuff. And I know that's a tough sell to people when they hear trauma informed. I keep trying to figure, I told you this, like I need another way to say trauma informed
Yeah.
that doesn't freak people out.
But think
Um,
about it, right? It's like you work with people, everybody has trauma. There's
yeah,
no person in the world that has not experienced trauma. And I think you work with people, you work with trauma. It's there,
yeah.
you like it or not.
Well, and people don't understand how trauma impacts people's communication patterns,
Yeah.
right? And understanding, how that people bring that stuff into the workplace and how it disrupts your team and how it disrupts productivity. And if you understand some of just those fundamental principles about how not only traumatic but difficult experiences
Mhm.
impact people and you're able to respond in a way that is supportive versus punitive, you're going to get a lot farther.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that Mel Robbins. I think I mentioned that with another conversation too. I just love Mel Robbins, and
Yeah.
she says like how you do life, you do work. So
Yeah.
there's no, and it's so true because we do bring our whole person to work,
Yeah.
our whole self,
Hmm.
and it just shows up in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring your whole person home.
Yeah.
So if work is challenging or a toxic work environment, you're going to bring that home too.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Got plenty of experience with that. So
yes. So yeah, you can find me at wellnessrochester.com or Megan Megan at wellnessrochester.com.
well, thank you. Thank you. I'm really,
You.
really excited for this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you next week and
Yeah.
continue our, one-on-ones and having
We
lunch and
continue
yes, our
geeking out
geek
on
out.
all this stuff together?
Looking forward to it. But I guess enjoy the holiday season if you are celebrating.
Yes. If it's comfortable for you
However you
and you want
celebrate.
to enjoy it, go for it. If you want to sit on your
However,
couch and do nothing, you do that
yes,
too.
whatever makes you happy, whatever brings joy
Abs-
to you.
Absolutely. To you as well, my friend.
Thank you, Megan. Take care.